Hello and welcome to another podcast of Jurors in Disguise. My name is Mary Rose Peterson and I own Covert Ops Jury Investigations. In this episode, we are going to discuss one of our cases from nearly 5 years ago. The client's name is Patrick Palumbo, and his case is out of Orange County, Florida. The jury voir dire took place on January 29th of 2008. The judge was Judge Mark L. Lubay. And there are a few things that Judge Lubay said to the prospective jurors that I believe are important to read to you from my report. He said to them, I'm going to be asking you some questions about your qualifications to serve as jurors in this particular case. The purpose of that questioning is to determine if your decision in this case would be influenced by any opinion which you may now hold, or by some personal experience or special knowledge which you may now hold about the subject matter to be tried. The object is to obtain a jury impartial to the issues of this case based upon the evidence presented in the courtroom without being influenced by any outside factors. Please understand this questioning is not for the purpose of prying into your personal affairs or for personal reasons, and in fact, I would not allow the attorneys to do so. It is only for the purpose of obtaining an impartial jury. Okay. A little later on, Judge Lubay said, as I've stated, the first part of the trial is called the voir dire examination. Voir dire is a French term, which means to speak the truth. Questions will be asked touching on your qualification to serve as a juror in this particular case. As I said before, these questions are not designed to pry into your personal affairs. The purpose is to determine if your decision in this case would in any way be influenced by opinions which you may now hold, or by some personal or special knowledge which you may have concerning the subject matter to be tried, and to obtain 6 people to impartially try the issues in this case. Then he said, I want to point out there is never going to be enough time for you to answer every question that brings out something in your background that may prevent you from being fair to both the state and the defendant. I'm asking you to volunteer any information you feel might make you biased or against the state or the defendant or both parties. Then a little later, he asked, have any of you or any of your close friend or family members ever been a victim of a crime? Juror Marcia Gervais, who is the subject of this report, admitted to having a storage unit broken into, a car vandalized, and an apartment broken into. She failed to claim several other issues, which we will discuss in this podcast as far as her victimization, which, had she been truthful, would have absolutely gotten her excused from the jury. The judge a little later said, as I told you when I started this, ladies and gentlemen, there is no time to go over every single question that could possibly raise any possible prejudice you may have regarding any criminal case. Now, do any of you have anything else that you think we ought to know that would or may have a bearing one way or another on your ability to sit as a fair and impartial juror and render a fair and impartial verdict in this case for both the state and the defense? Anybody else have anything they think we really ought to know? Crickets, crickets. All right. Next, Assistant State Attorney Frank George addressed the veneer. He said several things, but 2 or 3 things stuck out to me. He said, what I'm looking for is a level playing field. What we're looking for is a clean slate, 7 people. Another little later, he said, he didn't say it. He actually had dialogue with someone in regards to being a mandatory reporter, because this was a sexual allegation by a child, well, actually by the mom and stepdad, but that the child was the one ultimately saying that something had happened. There was quite a bit of discussion during the voir dire about those who were teachers, who'd worked with children, who were mandatory reporters. So someone actually asked about being a mandatory reporter. However, Juror Gervais stayed silent. even though she claimed to have been a teacher for many, many years, since the 70s, which made her an automatic mandatory reporter. Then the defense attorney, David Fussell, addressed the veneer and he said, "We want a fair jury. That's what this process is all about. Any of you think you can tell whether somebody is lying by just looking at them?" An unidentified juror spoke up and said, "I think there's some training that can be done to spot that." Attorney Fussell then asked, "Well, has anybody here had any kind of training like that?" Juror Gervais again said nothing, concealing the fact that she claims to be psychic. Keyword claim. Then he asked of one of the jurors, "And are you a mandatory reporter?" So again, great discussion about being a mandatory reporter. He again concluded by asking one more time, "Any of the rest of you mandatory reporters?" Crickets, crickets. Juror Gervais said nothing. So we investigated the entire jury. And like I said, when we found what we found on Marcia Gervais, I was horrified, but I was also thankful because I felt that Patrick had a true chance to come home once all the facts of what Marcia Gervais claimed to be were revealed to the court. 5 years later, I'm sitting here telling you I was horribly wrong. Yeah. On her LinkedIn profile, she states she received a bachelor's in English and journalism from FSU. And in the About section, she states, "I have over 20 years of handwriting analyst experience, having worked with both children and adults. I also guest lecture and conduct seminars on the psychic experience." Okay. Would you want a psychic on your jury? Would you want someone who had been working with children for 25 years on your jury if you were falsely accused by a kid? I don't think so. We also found an article called "The Psychic Experience. Are You Psychic?" written by Juror Gervais. And it says, "Marcia Gervais is a psychic medium and a handwriting analyst. She received her Minister of Metaphysics degree in Los Angeles." Yeah, it doesn't surprise anybody, does it? She has published the groundbreaking reference manual, The National New Age Yellow Pages, and has been featured in Omni magazine. It said her associates in private investigation affords her the foundation to work with law enforcement. She left that part out. So she's also a private investigator and works with law enforcement. Where's her allegiance going to be during a trial? Certainly not to the defendant, in my opinion. Marcia's class, The Psychic Experience, which helps students develop their own psychic abilities, is offered at the Renaissance Senior Center in Orlando, Florida. She also consults with parents whose children show signs of early psychic abilities. In fact, her email address was thepsychicexperience@yahoo.com. Now, given what you know so far, if you were falsely accused by a kid of a sex crime, would this be an appropriate juror to decide your fate? I don't think so. Then she says in this article, "Is psychic talent hereditary? Yes. My mother did automatic writing. My Dutch grandmother read tarot cards. My Louisiana grandmother saw ghosts. And my two sisters both are clairvoyant and clairsentient. I'm a psychic and photographic medium." So are you psychic? She asks. Grab a sheet of paper that already has several lines of your cursive writing on it. As a handwriting analyst with over 30 years experience, I can tell you immediately if you have natural intuition just by looking at the long words you have written. We found a wedding site called The Wedding Expert online. On that website, Juror Gervais advertises her services by saying, "If you need some interesting entertainment for your wedding affair, I offer 20 years of experience in the field of handwriting analyst and can make for a very unique, one-of-a-kind experience for your bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, bridal showers, and wedding events. Would you want her on your jury? I don't think so. On the Party Pop website, Juror Gervais advertises, in addition to a bachelor's degree in journalism and English, she has worked as a teacher in high school and elementary environments and is available for every type of event from sweet 16s to anniversaries to office parties. Marcia showcased her impressive skills at the Orange County School Board's Teach-In Day for 14 years, surprising and intriguing students and teachers with her focused demonstrations and examination of handwriting samples. So she's not only a teacher, she performs for teachers and students. One of the most shocking pieces of evidence against Juror Gervais that undeniably proved she was biased against Mr. Palumbo were her own words in a YouTube video that I'm going to play at the end of this podcast. She talks about being a victim at a very young age of abuse, and then she later married someone in 1979 and filed for divorce by taking out a restraining order for protection in 1989. Is this somebody that you think is an appropriate juror for a case of alleged abuse by a child? I don't think so. Marcia Gervais sat on Patrick's jury after lying to the judge's face. We found an article in the Orlando Sentinel from 1994 that says stars of little theater shine in many roles. And there's a picture of Marcia Gervais and other people getting ready for their stage performance. Again, is this actress someone that you would want on your jury, spinning your jury, if you had been falsely accused? I don't think so. So we handed off to Attorney Brian Savy, who wrote and filed the motion based on the evidence of juror misconduct that we found. It was strongly worded, beautifully written, as always. So the motion that Brian Savy filed sat on the judge's desk until April 27th of 2022, when he ordered the state to respond. Now remember, my report is dated December of 2020. It was filed by Assistant State Attorney Colin Moore, who pointed out that during the voir dire, Juror Gervais asked to speak to the court, the judge, privately. So this was said in front of the judge's bench to the judge's face. She said, I have a longtime friend of the family convicted of lewd and lascivious about 10 years ago. The judge said, okay, so do you hold any prejudice for or against the state or for or against the defendant because of that incident? She said, no, sir. The court said, you feel your friend was rightfully or wrongfully convicted? She said, it was fair. Judge said, okay. Then Mr. Fussell, the defense attorney, said, when Mr. Landis indicated he could be biased against the state, you looked around to see who it was. Do you feel like Mr. Palumbo? Do you feel in your mind Mr. Palumbo is starting from the point of being guilty, or do you have any bias? Juror Gervais says, I pay attention to detail. I have to start with the facts. I can't make things up. I'm a proofreader. Which ironically seems to me that she made up because we found no evidence of her ever being a proofreader. She claimed to be a handwriting analyst psychic. Then Mr. George, the state attorney, said, do you have any concern that you would not be able to be fair and impartial to either side? She said, no, not at all. Okay. That's what the state attorney stood by when he wrote this, asking the judge to deny the motion for a new trial. Then the state attorney on page 20 said Ms. Gervais's answers here refutes all allegations by the defendant that she was intentionally deceitful and not forthcoming with her information. None of the non-disclosures claimed by the defendant related to questions that were posed to Gervais directly, but rather to the veneer in general. I'm sorry, but were you not listening when the judge said repeatedly to speak up? That even if it wasn't being addressed to you personally, that you were to speak up and let the court know that you had something to say? Did you miss that part of the voir dire? Because I didn't. Then he says, but given her direct response here to the court, of course, which was a lie. Sorry, that's me interjecting that. And the attorneys, the record fully supports that she established herself as a juror who could be fair-minded and impartial and could understand the instructions given to her by the court. For these additional substantive considerations beyond the failed timeliness of the defendant's motion, the claim should be summarily denied. Okay? That was the state's motion. State Attorney Colin Moore. A few weeks later, Judge Wayne Wooten denied the motion that Brian had written. And what did Judge Wooten quote as the reason for the denial? Oh, interesting. The exact same thing the state said. Nothing new. Literally put the exact same exhibits with the exact same dialogue and said the exact same thing that the state just said. Makes me wonder if Judge Wooten even saw this, or did some paralegal, some JA just throw this together so that he could deny it. Same thing. Has Juror Gervais quoting, I have a longtime friend of the family convicted of lewd and lasciviousness about 10 years ago, but I can be fair and impartial. I'm a proofreader. Were you? Why didn't you speak up about who you truly were? Why weren't you honest? Why didn't you say, I'm a handwriting analyst? You apparently are very proud of it. You entertain at parties. Why didn't you say, I have psychic abilities? You're proud of being a psychic? Supposedly. None of that came out. So on May 9th, 2020, Judge Wayne Wooten denied the motion based on the juror misconduct that we found. I was stunned. I still am. How do you deny that? How do you deny that this person was on Patrick's jury? How do you deny that he didn't get a fair trial by an impartial juror? Because she stood there and lied to the judge's face. She lied to Judge Lubay, lied right there to his face. Is Marcia Gervais the type of juror that you would want on your jury when you're facing a life sentence with no possibility of parole? Because somebody said you did something that they couldn't prove, but you couldn't prove didn't happen. I don't think so. Another document that we found in our reinvestigation was on the Orange County Clerk of Court's official records. It's a notice of commencement for a new roof, and it names James Williamson and Marcia Gervais. This was dated in 2022. Now, that's the first time that we had seen James Williamson name on anything associated with Marcia Gervais. So we went back and continued to look. We found a warranty deed from May of 2003 naming James Williamson and Marcia Gervais at the same address. We found a satisfaction of mortgage where they paid it off in 2005, again naming James A. Williamson and Marcia L. Gervais. So Marcia owned a home with James A. Williamson. When we did a background check on James Williamson in Orange County, we discovered James Williamson James Williamson had been in prison. In 1990, was the offense date. He was sentenced in 1996, and he served 7 years in Seminole County. Now, Marcia had said that that's where this L&L took place in Seminole County. So this person who she said to the judge's face was a longtime friend of the family, convicted of L&L, was actually a man who she had been living with for years and who was convicted of sexual battery by an adult of a victim less than 12. Here's the longtime friend of the family. So was that truthful? No. Knowing that, would you want this juror on your jury? I don't think so. This is James Arthur Williamson today. From what we can tell, still living with Marcia Gervais. And yet, denied, denied, denied. Even that wasn't enough to convince the courts to grant what the law states is required, necessary, I believe is the exact word, which is a hearing, a juror interview, a new trial. No. Denied, denied, denied. Well, tonight I have the privilege and honor of interviewing Patrick's mom and sister. They are going to talk a little bit more about the case, and they are going to show you, tell you some things that happened during Patrick's trial. And the fact that the trial continued and he was convicted afterwards is nothing short of shocking. But I'm going to let them tell you in their own words. So help me welcome Patrick's family. Hey, Emily.
Can you see me?
No? Oh, there you go.
You
Hi.
do? Hi.
Long
I
time no
can't.
talk.
I know. Well,
Hey, Gina.
where are you? G?
Coming.
Oh, okay.
There she is. Hey.
Hi. Hi. In the beginning when you first did this, you caught them off guard and they didn't know what to do. Now they do not want to admit
No,
what they've done is wrong.
no.
So that's why they're procrastinating or avoiding.
Mhm.
And this is what needs to get out there. They're
Right,
not facing because this is serious.
right.
This is serious because they go, well, he was found guilty by his peers. Well, they weren't his peers.
No,
So that wasn't
Mhm.
a proper trial.
No, no, it was not. A jury of your peers simply means that they're breathing.
Oh,
That's that legally. There's no description, there's no standards anymore. It used to be everybody came from the same village and everybody knew you. Those were your peers. We are way past that. That doesn't matter if, in fact, they don't want you to know who the defendant is. They don't want you to know anything about the case. And if you say you do, bye bye. Yeah, you have to now.
right.
So
Well,
there is
that
no
was
such
like
thing.
they didn't even tell us. I don't know. The other thing we wanted to bring out was at one point, that attorney offered Patrick a plea deal
Mhm.
that he would get 3.5 years
Oh,
or
no, I
something.
don't think it was the attorney. I think it was
The
from
state,
the other
the
side.
state
That,
attorney.
yeah, it was the
Right.
state attorney offered him.
Well, they would
But
have had to offer it through your attorney. So that's where the
exactly, but
confusion.
his attorney didn't explain it properly because
Mhm.
we weren't aware, Pat wasn't aware that the ultimatum was life in prison. Because I believe it was like he would be registered as a sex offender and 5 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
But he was so adamant that he was not guilty,
Right.
that he was not going to do that, and he was convinced that he was going to win.
Sure. Well,
But
we all are. You trust the
yes,
system. You believe in what you think the system is. You believe what you know growing up, what you heard, what you learned, what you saw on TV. And unfortunately, our system is very broken and it's designed to win
Hmm.
and it's designed for finality. So when the gavel, that's it, it's done.
Yeah.
Go die, go to prison and die because the jury of your not so peers decided that you're guilty. Seriously? She's living and
No.
sleeping with this guy while she's serving on Patrick's jury.
Right.
Lied about him, lied about his charges, lied about her relationship with him, said she was psychic. Oh, come on.
The fact that she's living in the same home as a sexual predator, right there.
Well, and that's the thing. We know, sadly, we've experienced it as well, that we know that just because you're convicted and you're on that registry does not mean, in fact, I have a huge issue with Halloween and all the nasty
Right.
comments.
Yeah.
Just because you're on the registry does not mean that you ever molested anybody, let alone a kid. Okay.
But she would have held information.
She
That's the
concealed,
problem.
she
Yes.
withheld. That's the problem. She was asked and asked and asked and asked, and she did not disclose. And then she tried to spin it to the judge's face. That's what
Yep.
kills me. I'm like, you walked up to a judge's face and lied,
Yep.
spun it, minimized, whatever you want to say. You know you lied. You lied.
Yep.
You said he was a longtime friend of the family. You didn't say, well, actually, I own a home with a guy and we sleep together every night. And it was 12 years ago, not 10. And it wasn't L&L, it was sexual battery on a child. So I still think I can be fair and impartial, though. They would have been like,
You should have asked to
bye
be
bye.
recused. Oh my
That's how
God.
Patrick got convicted. It had nothing to do with the facts of the case or the testimony of those false witnesses. He got convicted because you had somebody on that jury that wasn't leaving until he was.
Hmm.
And I think that, she talks her whole life is about influencing others. I'm with you. I think that she went in that room and she spun that jury. How
Hmm.
do I know you can do that? Because I've watched the movie. And because I was a four-person, it's very easy to spin a jury, especially in a sex crime. Nobody wants to talk about that with strangers.
Right.
They're horrified that they had to sit through it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I would like to know from your perspective what it's been like all these years fighting and being, denied, 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 knowing what you know about the case and about Patrick and about how jacked up this is.
When it first happened and they found him guilty, which, well, they didn't tell us it would be guilty with life with no parole. I mean, when they said those words, no one knew that. I don't
So
know
you
who
you
knew
didn't
that.
know. You didn't know going into this it was an automatic life sentence.
No.
No.
Wow.
And they wouldn't
No.
discuss any of that. They wouldn't say what it was.
Wait, the day of the trial,
Hmm.
Ray's brother was going to testify against him. The attorney sent him home.
Ray is the girl's father,
Yeah.
Okay. The accuser's
and the
father.
brother
Yes.
was going to testify against his brother because Patrick had seen him the next day and they talked and he knew what really went on.
Right.
And they
And he knew what
dismissed
his
him.
brother was about. He knew what really
Right.
happened. It was a
Right.
birthday party and things, and he knew
Right.
placement and time frames of Pat. He was
Right.
going to do all of that, and he was like, "We're not going to need you."
So was this your attorney or the state attorney that sent
Our
him home?
attorney.
Oh,
Our
okay.
attorney.
Very
Ours,
thoughtful sent
that
him
we were
home.
paying.
Because at the end of the day, because I was so infuriated, because I said, "Did you even believe he was innocent?" And he couldn't even answer me. Had we known, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but he definitely didn't believe him, and you could see that in the representation of what he was
Well,
doing.
just going back on Patrick, as you know, here we are, a large Italian family.
Mhm.
Everyone's close, everyone hugs, everyone's caring, care about children, care about elderly.
Right.
everything. It's just there. And there has never, ever been any incident with Patrick. He's
No.
always cared. The fact that he came from a divorced family, I was divorced and raised them. He
Mhm.
was sensitive to other kids who were from divorce or whatever.
Right.
And everybody loved him. They all wrote letters to the judge. Fussell told them, the attorney said, write letters to the judge.
Hmm.
All
which
these
in
young
the end meant
people.
nothing.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
thing. The attorney said, "Well, do y'all want to testify at sentencing?" I said, "Why?"
Right,
Automatic life sentence. It makes
right,
a difference. I said, "So why am I going to get up there and humiliate myself in front of the
right,
state attorney who's just going to be nasty?" No.
right. So here's another thing. They sent, because Avery was petite, then they sent her up on the stand holding a stuffed animal.
Of
We
course.
weren't allowed in there. And then she came back out through that animal, and she had a little stepbrother at the time.
Hmm.
And she's playing on the carpet floor. Pat is sitting right there next to her because we're all in the hallway. So it's me, my mom, it was Patrick, and it was her mom and her stepfather.
Hmm.
All of us are there. She wasn't traumatized by Pat, wasn't even phased. He was there. Neither were the stepfather and the mom that Pat. So if that had happened and you're so traumatized
Right.
that he did that to you, you'd be crying,
Right.
trembling.
You'd be
The mom would
horrified.
be like,
Right.
oh my God, we need to get her away. No, just playing with her.
This
Like
is
nothing.
right before trial?
This was during it.
During trial?
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
After she testified, she walked
What?
out, threw that little animal away, and started playing. Yep. Yes.
Is
Hmm.
dead.
Yeah.
If I thought my daughter had been sexually um molested, assaulted, I'd say, do anything you want to my couch. Take it. Take
Right.
every blanket in my house.
Yeah.
Right.
Take it.
Well, you
Whatever
wouldn't have
you want.
cleaned it. You would
I
have thought
wouldn't
there might be
no.
evidence there.
Right. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be making excuses.
No.
I mean, it's
No.
just all of it. And the fact how their stories that there was a dinner party, that this everything on when they're sitting up there and they weren't cross-examined, there was nothing asked, he just let it go. So it just was really very difficult to watch. Then we went and got subs at Publix, and because my brother was confident he was going to be innocent,
Mm-hmm.
and you just never forget that.
No.
You don't forget that.
No.
And then at the sentencing, he was trying to say like like I love you, and they're like telling him to stop. It was very difficult. And then, it's difficult to live or to enjoy things because you feel guilty that
Yeah.
you're out there and you're looking at the ocean and you're
Yeah.
doing things because he's in there. And then for the longest time, you don't see them when they first take him away.
Right.
And then my mom and I went and visited him, and he was in this little cell with this little slip,
Mm-hmm.
and he's no air, and he was just happy to see us. And like, I'm looking at him like, oh my God, this is awful. Because
Yeah.
they had it where you film it and you could just see him. It was
Yeah.
just terrible.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we would go visit him. And then forever and ever, I would visit him every single weekend, every single weekend. And then life, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
life and kids, and
Yeah.
it just gets difficult.
Yeah.
And it's just very hard because,
It's taken a toll on our entire family. I have
yes.
well, the two boys and I have two daughters. Gina's the youngest
And
one is a girl too.
I have my kids
Mhm.
didn't know their dad because he was, and so Pat was always with them. He took them
Yeah.
fishing. He would
Yeah.
take them and do things. So they were young
Yeah.
when he went, and that was very difficult because he was like a father figure. So that was hard for them to understand and process, which immediately I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
And it just is a very difficult thing, and I mean, it affects your family, it affects your whole life, it affects
Sure,
each of our lives.
it
It
does.
just is, and there was, a lot of crying at night, a lot of,
Hmm.
it's just been a very difficult thing.
Yeah. No,
It's,
I get it.
yeah. The
It was.
state attorney was like a bulldog going,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
yeah, it's
Well,
exactly.
it's a theater. It's the court's
Yes,
house,
yeah,
and it's a theater. And you walked in, and all the players were there, and they all had their scripts, and they were well rehearsed. You didn't have a chance. In fact, sex crime is the easiest type of accusation to be convicted of because if you do take the stand and you start to be tear up because
right,
you just can't believe you're even here and you're so broken over what this has done to you and your family and your reputation and the thought of going to prison. Well, you know what? You're crying, you must be remorseful. So you must have
right.
done it, you know. And if you get up there and start screaming, I'm innocent, I did not do this, and you start getting angry, oh, you're a violent person. Again, you
Exactly.
must have done this. You can't
He
win.
never
No,
If,
you
if
should
you
have
can't.
been.
seem with no reaction, then you seem like a psychopath. I mean, you can't win.
No,
And they lie and cry on cue, and you sit there just horrified because a few hours, I mean, within an hour into this, I knew we're going to prison because they're all lying. His attorney's just sitting there.
yeah, it's exactly the same. They were lying. And then we had somebody who, you know, he
Yeah.
was just sitting there doing his time,
Yeah.
waiting to leave.
Well, some of my favorite things they say during the voir dire examination of the jurors, they say, I could just sit there and read a book. I could play cards. I could take a nap. I don't have to, we don't have to defend ourselves. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Not if you're innocent until proven guilty, then why are you called the defendant?
Right,
Why is your trial attorney the defense attorney? You're on the defensive,
right,
and you better defend yourself. And to sit there and say, I'm just going to read a book. Well, if you have an aggressive attorney who's like, objection, objection, objection,
right.
then you're on the defense here. You're just a little too aggressive. You're trying a little too hard, and if you go up and try to impeach a kid and make a kid cry, well, now you're a monster. You're a horrible
Right.
person. Who does that? You can't win.
No,
Mm-mm.
You just can't win. I don't know of anyone, and there's probably are a few that have been accused of a sex crime that the jury finds them not guilty, but I haven't seen it yet.
it's
I sat there, I
ridiculous.
barely knew Martin, and I sat there for 3 hours going, that's not true, and that's not true, and wow, that's really not true. And I'm looking at his attorney like, do something,
Right.
say something, say something.
Yeah,
It was the same. It was
that's how we
ridiculous.
were. He didn't object. He didn't say anything. And there was one point where he could have, well, he didn't want to cross-examine her because they didn't want to upset her. And her deposition was different than what she said in court,
Mhm.
but they didn't bring that up either.
I'm not letting your attorney off the hook, but I don't think that it would have mattered no matter what he said or did because of this juror.
Right.
She was allowed on the jury because she lied. She
Well, the fact she lied to the judge's face went up to the judge.
uh And that's what I thought. I thought when we show, this is what I thought. When Brian's motion hit with my attachments and all the exhibits and everything, I really expected in all of our cases, and including ours, I expect that the judges are horrified. I expected
Right.
then they get angry. That's what I thought. I thought they're going to be pissed off that you came into their court and you lied to them right to their face. You
Right.
lied to them about things that would have gotten you struck had you been honest. They told you to be honest. They made you take an oath and swear to be honest, and you still lied. I have been horrified at the reaction, not so much by the state attorneys because they want to keep the win, but by the judges. Why aren't you horrified? You should be horrified that this woman sat in there, came up, talked to your face and lied, said,
Right.
"Oh, longtime friend of the family, convicted of L and L." What? That's
Right.
not true at all. That's not true. You wanted on the jury or you would have told the truth. So you come in there and you lie, and then we find out that you think you're psychic.
Right.
What? You shouldn't have been on
Yeah.
anybody's jury, but
Eh,
especially not this.
Right.
You've been a teacher for 25 years teaching students. You're a mandatory reporter. You lied about that.
Right.
You lied about being able to take someone's handwriting and figure out if they're telling the truth. Well, do we know if they showed her any of this kid's handwriting? We don't know. Were there
Right.
any notes written? Was there anything where she got to see one of the people's the witness's handwriting so she could analyze it and say, okay, they're being truthful, and then go back in that jury room and say, hey, they told the truth. I read their mind
Right.
and they told the truth. They were not making that up. He's guilty. How do we
Yeah.
know that didn't happen? Well, we don't. We don't, because that's what she claimed she could do. And you get into court and the judge is like, well, she said, she came up there and she said, yeah, but she lied.
Right.
So that's been my through all of this is I'm just absolutely horrified that this is not taken more seriously. That's why I started this podcast. It's like, look, you had an actress on your jury. You had an actress.
Yeah.
Came in there, whether she was put there or not, I don't know, but she should have at least been questioned. You weren't even allowed a juror interview. And the law says a juror interview is necessary to know why did you lie? You
Right.
had the right to face your accuser, basically. You had the right to do that, and the judge said no. And then Brian asked for a rehearing based on the law says, and the judge again said no. That's not okay.
No.
So it's laws for thee, not for me. Yeah, pretty much. And there Patrick sits after all these years
Yeah.
in prison for something that we all know he didn't do. I've talked to Patrick. I've talked to him before we were even hired. I talked to him yesterday or day before.
Yeah.
Patrick, there's no. I've talked to people that creeped me out. They were just creepy.
Oh,
You get a creepy vibe. They say things that, ugh. And I'm not saying they're guilty, but a friend of mine who's a longtime therapist, he said, I have counseled true, admitted sex offenders. And he said, and then I counseled Martin Peterson. No. He said, there is a stark reality difference between someone who is a pedophile, who has those tendencies, that has the urges, versus somebody that was just simply accused. Complete different. And he
right.
said, I knew it the first time they opened their mouth. I could tell you whether they truly did that or there's no way they would have ever done that ever. And yet
Right.
those people don't even come and testify in court. It's because it's a show. The state had no intention of letting Patrick walk out the front door that day.
No.
And was
Oh,
there anything else about the case? I mean, that is shocking to know that there's his there's his accuser out in the hall playing around right by his
Uh-huh.
feet after testifying, not the least bit phased that he's sitting there. And the
No.
stepdad, not even phased.
No.
Your family has a special place in my heart, as we like to say as Christians, because it's traumatizing on a level that can't be described. Like you said, do you talk about it? Do you not? I mean, what do you do? I don't know. I just knew I had to talk about it because I knew it wasn't true. So I defended him for 4 years, 2 months, and 13 days. I'm still defending him 10 years later because I know it's not true. And I know that I've talked to Patrick and I know you and I know the family and I know the case. And no, no, Patrick should never have been falsely accused and certainly should never have been convicted. But we know why. I know why he got convicted
Mm-hmm.
because
yeah.
that one wasn't honest. And because your courts, our courts, have said, so what? We got our conviction, we got our verdict. That's all they cared about. So, like you said, Emily, what do you do now? What do you do? Well, 6 months ago, our cases were just like yours, getting denied, denied, denied. And the evidence that the jury was tainted and you didn't get a fair trial is overwhelming. And when I tell people some of your case, sometimes I tell people about this psychic, their jaws drop. They're horrified. That's what should have happened. That's what the judge, forget the state attorney because they wanted to keep the win, but that's what the judge should have done. The appropriate emotional response by the judge would have been to say, "Oh my God, are you kidding? Well, we got to fix this. We got to fix this." Okay. At the very least, grant a new trial,
Right.
and then rerun it. If the case is that solid, just rerun it. Nope. No, they're angry at me. They're angry at us for finding it. They're angry at you for hiring us. And then they just deny it without, against the law, going against their own laws. They just deny it. Well, 6 months ago, I'd had it. I just said, you know what? I don't know what to do but get louder. We just have to get louder. There aren't enough voices crying in the wilderness, as the Bible likes to say. There aren't enough voices crying out saying, no. You don't get, what about Me Too? Me Too, what about the men who are falsely accused by the women? That whole movement made me crazy. And you know what? I'm sorry, and my heart is broken for true victims of sexual abuse. But that's not Patrick. His case isn't about that. His accuser was not a victim of by him, and ours is the same. And we've represented quite a few clients, and false, false, false. Most of them involving a stepmom or an ex-wife. It's got to change. The laws have got to change. And I take that back. They don't need to change. The laws are in place. The judges just aren't obeying them. They're not following.
Yeah.
They're already in place. Just all you have to do is follow them. That's why Brian filed a motion for a rehearing. It's like, wait a minute, time out, judge. Here's an out to rethink this because you're really going against your own laws by denying it without
Right.
a juror interview, without a hearing. And yet, again,
Yeah, they won't even let it, and I don't feel like they're really reading what Brian's written and stating it there. I think they're just fluffing it around here. You look at this,
Yeah.
and then the next thing you know, it's done.
well, the judge here he quoted the state attorneys. He literally verbatim quoted the state attorney's
Yeah.
response. He didn't even have his own opinion and denied it based on what the state attorney wrote. I don't think he read anything. I think he had a paralegal. He said, fix this. I'm going to deny it. So write something. And they just took what the state already wrote and they stuck it in there. Well, judges are supposed to be fair and impartial, and they're not. They're just not. They're the state. They are the state. And that's why I tell everybody, the sad reality is that when you went into that courtroom, only you and those that came to support Patrick were on his side. Everyone else in that courtroom was the state.
Yeah, ridiculous, not fair. It's horrible. You took someone's life away. I felt like that day that, like, they murdered him, like he had died. It's horrible. It's just a void. I mean, I still have his clothes that we carried in the suitcase hanging in the garment bag from that day. I hung it in the closet, and that's where it remained.
Your life
His
just
suit that he
stops.
wore,
It just
and we have
stops.
his phone, and we have everything.
I have his phone. That's when they were little.
Little.
This big.
Little
Yeah,
bitty.
that big.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have all this, and it's just,
And he was
You
holding
get-
a crucifix that was carved from wood in
Mhm.
his hand.
It's heartbreaking. And to know that they've done this to your family on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes me angry, is that the state does this on purpose in order to win. And when you get a kid that'll lie and cry on cue, or his ex-wife or a stepdaughter or whoever, it's an easy win. It's an easy win for the state.
it's so sad
It
because,
really is.
what they did to the child, to that girl,
Right. Well, she's growing
know,
up
coaching
with that
her.
believing that happened to her, that she's a
Yeah.
victim,
Yeah,
Yep.
victim of abuse.
yeah,
It
it's
is.
really
It's really
disgusting.
it's really sickening when you consider
Yeah,
what they're forcing that child into, a lifetime of victimization for a sexual offense that didn't happen.
Well, the fact that these women
Yeah.
do that and then they have no remorse,
Right.
that the fact that you're doing that to your own daughter,
Right.
that you're putting these thoughts in her head because they're coaching their own children
Right.
just to retaliate against a husband, boyfriend, or whoever.
Right.
And that's, the child suffers and they don't suffer a consequence, the woman.
Well, and the jurors, they've
Yeah.
they've committed it's a third degree
Yes.
felony to lie to the court. They should be held accountable for that. The
Yeah.
judge uh, admonished
Well,
them to tell the truth, and they didn't.
yes, she should
She
be
didn't.
held accountable because of all of that. Unbeknownst to
Absolutely.
any of us.
Yeah. No, that's why I call this podcast Jurors in Disguise. She disguised herself as an honorable person.
Yep.
It could be fair and impartial, a professional person with a degree and all that. And she
Patrick
wasn't at
is
all
called
who she pretended to be.
Yes, she certainly did.
She put on a good show.
But she's an actress, so she can lie very easily.
Yes. And she
I
did.
mean,
She
look at
stood right there and lied to the judge's face. And the judge said,
Patrick is so discouraged, and he tries to be optimistic, I guess, for me, because I don't tell him, like when I visit him and we spend the time together, then when I leave, I feel as though I have been punched in the stomach, and I've held my breath for the hours I was in there. And when I get out, it's like, can I take a breath? And every time after I visit him, I go home and I'm curled up in a ball and I'm on the bed. And it takes me a day. I don't tell him this because I don't want him to be torn up about it. But it's horrible. It's horrible to leave him there and to see that wire and
yeah,
all that it is. I feel like I'm in another world.
yeah, well, you
It's
are.
just not the
I
way
was
are.
it's
just gonna
supposed to be.
say we are.
You are, and you were handcuffed at the same time he was, you just
They
different
told him,
type of
he said
prison.
they told him when they took him away there, they told him don't look back. And he didn't, thank God, because I was like,
Yeah,
I couldn't. And he went and then he was gone. It was like,
yeah.
you took my son away. It's just, ugh, I can't relive that.
No, don't.
There's
So
such a void that's there, and I know you've learned to live with it and try to deal with it and handle it, and at the end of the day, it's not right. The injustice is so big that it's hard to even fit inside my head all at the same time. And
and
I,
I'm getting older, and my
yeah,
son is concerned that I mean, it's inevitable. Sooner or later, I will be gone. And he's worried, he worries about me and he goes, I don't know what I'll do. He's so sad when someone in there loses a mother.
yeah,
They're so destroyed.
they are.
And he calls me and he goes, Mom, I love you so much. I want you to know. And, it's soon we'll be 80. And who knows when the good Lord's going to say, come on home.
Yeah.
So,
So we just continue to speak out and speak up, and we continue to fight and say, no, this is not justice. What happened to your family and happened to Patrick is not justice. What happened to that little girl is not right. That's not just either.
no.
Thank you for watching another podcast of Jurors in Disguise. If you know of someone who could use our help, our contact information will follow the conclusion of the video. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe. And next, stay tuned because I'm going to show you the video I promised. It's a YouTube video of Marcia Gervais telling in her own words how she had been a victim of abuse at a young age and had decided that was never going to happen to her again. Is this the kind of person that you would want on your jury if you'd been falsely accused of abuse? I don't think so.
I'll tell you the motivating story of airport, which is kind of a shocker, but it's absolutely true. When I was in my mid-20s, I moved to California. My sister was in law school at the time, and I thought it was a good time to take a vacation for teaching. And so I went and visited with her and decided I wasn't going to come back to Florida. I was going to stay in California. And one of the things that I got involved in is looking at or exploring just different alternative healing modalities and things like that, because California was very avant-garde in that. It was very progressive. But one of the people that I met, that is a young man that I started really liking, about 2 months after we started dating, he got drunk and he slammed my head up against a brick wall. I didn't like that very much. It scared the devil off me, and I thought, you know what? I'm not a stupid one. Counter and happened to be help. So I thought, well, I'm never going to let it happen again.